Both Grambling and Texas Southern knocked off Pac-12 opponents this week. Also, what are the ramifications and results from the SIAC CIAA championship? Oh yeah, it's Locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked on HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked on HBCU podcast, your number one. Daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked on HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off, it does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. And today's episode is brought to you by Sling TV. They have a massive lineup, especially when it comes to college football season. I don't think there's anybody who can't find something to watch. ACC, SEC, Pac-12, Big 12, the college football playoffs. Everything you want. It's the TV that you love for the price you love. Go ahead and try it today. Sling TV. And Texas Southern and Grambling had major victories this weekend in the first year of the SWAC Pac-12 Legacy Series. Both of these Tigers knocked off a Pac-12 opponent. Major victory. We cannot understate the importance of this game because nobody expects, outside of the HBCU bubble, objective people who don't have a single side in this, they don't expect a SWAC team to beat a Pac-12 team, period. They might expect one to do it simply because if you have this many games, one might slip up. But I don't think they're pointing anybody out and saying, boom, boom. SWAC teams will forever be the underdog as long as the series is going on. It does not matter how many teams win, but every time one of us does win, let's make sure we celebrate it because it is extremely important to acknowledge, because Texas Southern knocking off Arizona State, Grambling knocking off Colorado. It's early in the season, but man, these things are important. But let's first backtrack and give a little bit of context of what the Pac-12 SWAC Legacy Series is. So what that is basically, it's an educational and athletic partnership between, obviously, these two conferences. They're going to have education. We're not really going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the athletic side of it. But you're going to have a partnership as far as athletics goes. And it's not rare for you to see an HBCU play a Power 5 conference, specifically in basketball. That's not rare at all. It's just the fact that most times it's a road game for the HBCU. Most times it's part of their early November, December heavy road trip, man. Like HBCU basketball, they travel. They get around at the beginning of the year. And then once it gets into conference season, then you start seeing home games every other week. But before that, no, you're going to be seeing road, occasional home, road. But what's special about this partnership is that not only are you going to have Pac-12 and SWAC teams going against each other, you're also going to have Pac-12 teams going to these SWAC teams. And I thought it was important because both of these teams that knocked off a Pac-12 team were at home. So, and these were the first two. Every other game before these two were actually in the Pac-12. They were home games for the Pac-12. Now it's time for the SWAC. And in the in the two games in which the Pac-12 team was on the road, they got packed up, period. And it was an impressive performance. Oh my gosh. I'm so envious because Texas Southern had their home opener. And if things would have went a little bit differently, and I might have been able to get out there for this game. And I could only imagine being at a home opener in HP&E, crowd rocking, and Arizona State is in town and you beat them. Because it might have been Sunday, but people were going to show up, if only because they're playing Arizona State. They might have had some cameras out, and then you win the game. And to quote the coach that they did foul, Arizona State did foul. You play to win the game. Hello. You play to win the game. And that's exactly what Texas Southern did. And you saw P.J. Henry. You saw John Walker. That duo once again combined for 40 points. The 2 times that they played together, because Henry did miss that second game of the season versus Texas Tech, and Walker did struggle. I don't know if that's coincidence. It's too many, or it's not enough games into the season to know if that's coincidence or, really a cause of it. But the two games that they played together, both of them scored over 20 points. And that happened once again here. And it took overtime for them to get this done. It was a great victory, and it was monumental. Now, you go ahead and you look at, also, this was Texas Southern's first win of the season, and it was Arizona State's first loss of the season. TSU is not new to this. They did this to Florida last year. This was right around the time when I first started the show. So this is, I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary here, actually. So this is fun, and it's kind of an interesting callback of sorts. But just because they've done this before, it doesn't make it less impressive. If anything, it should build a reputation that, hey, man, you Power 5 schools, you can't overlook Texas Southern. Now, when you look at Grambling, this game against Grambling, they won from start to finish. At no point in the 40 minutes of action did Grambling ever trail Colorado. Matter of fact, once they took the lead, it was never even tied. And I want to specifically focus on the second half, because I thought the second half was extremely important for a couple of reasons. One, Colorado ended on not to use this term lightly, but a 10-6 run. It's not really a run, but they ended it a little bit hot, and they outscored Grambling in the last 4 minutes of the second half, or of the first half, excuse me. So, okay, now you're coming out of halftime, and maybe you feel like you put some things together. And that's why I thought it was important. Let's go ahead and nip that in the bud. You ain't got nothing going on, Colorado. Nothing. The other reason I felt like it was very important is because you needed to show it wasn't accidental. I didn't just catch you off guard. I'm better than you today. Even if I ain't better than you tomorrow. Okay, because people are like, man, they just had an off day. I don't care. I do not care. If you have an off day against me and I beat you, guess what? I beat you, and I'm going to talk like I beat you. And we ain't going to see each other again for a while. So I'm going to continue to talk like I beat you. You know why? Because I beat you. And I don't care if you had an off day. I didn't. I was better than you. Even if it's only for a day, I was better than you. And until we play again, I was better than you. I am better than you, period. That's the way I think about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in that. I don't know. But the way I look at it is, you had to go ahead and show that you didn't just catch Colorado off guard. Yeah, they took your first punch, but you might expect, that Power 5, they just going to go ahead and bounce back. They took the first punch, and it was a good first punch. You up 14 points at halftime. You have a 14, 16-point lead for the majority of the second half. That's impressive. They took the first punch, and when they thought they were going to fire back on you, you punched them again. So you withstood some runs. That was very, very impressive. And you just forced havoc, or wreaked havoc all day, forcing multiple turnovers. I think they had 19. That was one of the things that Colorado fans were very upset about with their performance. Now, that's Colorado. Colorado don't play no basketball, whatever. I don't know. I don't know the history of Colorado. But what I will tell you is that right after Colorado lost to Grambling, they went on and they beat Tennessee. Tennessee is the number 11 ranked team in the country right now. Grambling beat the team that beat the number 11 team, the 11th ranked team in the country. Y'all ain't hearing me. Some people might want to say, Grambling this, Grambling that. Colorado ain't really this. All right. If you want to play the game about what Colorado is or what they aren't, Colorado, after losing to Grambling, directly after losing to Grambling, they went in and they knocked off Tennessee, the number 11th ranked team in the country. So that means that Grambling beat the team that beat the 11th ranked team in the country. In other words, Colorado wasn't an easy out. Grambling just had their number that day, and they looked really good in an impressive victory. I'm very happy. We'll see how the next couple of games in the series goes. The women's basketball teams have this series as well. I am very interested because, to me, nobody expects you to win. So when you do, it's a party. And going forward, we're going to be talking about another party, a conference championship party, the CIAA, and then also the SIAC, because Fayetteville State and Benedict College did win these games, and I'm going to tell you how and what they mean. Before I get into that, however, today's episode is brought to you by Upside. It is the best app that I'm kind of frustrated with myself for not using earlier. I remember all these times I was listening to Locked On Saints. My guy Ross just talking about upside. I'm like, okay, whatever. Finally I get it and I say, man, I should have listened to Ross earlier, because we're in a time when inflation is kicking people's butt. And everybody's going to cut back, whether that's grocery, going out, gas, driving, right? You don't have to do that as much with Upside because they're going to give you cash back. All you have to do is go to the place that Upside has, right? All you have to do is make sure you put your card in, tell them what you're getting, and the money is going to come back to either your bank account or your Upside account. And you can get $5 or more back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That is $5 or more back on your first purchase of $10 or more when you use the promo code LOCKED. Go get the Upside app right now. As we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day. Every single day, I appreciate it. For your second listen after you finish listening to me, make sure you go ahead and check out Peter Bukowski on Locked On Sports today, bringing in local experts to break down the national news. That's what makes us so much different, because you can get the big stories, but you get the inside information on it. That's why I love Locked On Sports today. But I want to talk about some of these conference championships, because it was D2 conference championship weekend, and that meant the SIAC and the CIAA were up for grabs, the official title. A lot of people like to say, well, this was the best team and that was the best team, and I understand it. However, when you look at the conference, you're going to have a champion. And even if you've been the best team all year, if you don't win the conference championship, you were not the champs. Well, Fayetteville State is the champs. Benedict has been the best team in arguably all of D2 HBCUs. Matter of fact, no, ain't no argument. They have been the best team of all Division II HBCUs this year. They are, I almost spoiled something for the next segment, but I caught myself like all the times I almost spoiled Black Panther in the house. I just said, you know what? Everybody ain't seen this yet. I'm going to shh. Sometimes you got to learn to tell yourself to shut up. But let's talk about these conference championships. Enough for the movie, man. Don't spoil anything in my comments either, man. Some of these people ain't watched it. Just DM me at South Exclusives. Y'all see it at the bottom of the screen. But Fayetteville State, to me, this was such a feel-good story. Like, to me, this just felt good to watch. Richard Hayes finally got Fayetteville State over that hump. They had been to 5 straight conference championship games. And when I tell you that, it's extremely impressive. But if you live through them, they lost the first 4. This was number 5 and they won it. But they lost the first 4. And the unfortunate part about losing so many conference championship games in a row is the conversation kind of departs from how good you are every year. And it's, well, why can't you get over the hump? It ain't about what you do in the regular season. People don't even care what you do in the regular season anymore. They almost expect you to get there. So all of your success becomes immediately devalued. People don't really care. But then also they can't look back and say, man, you guys have been really good for a good amount of time, because all they see are conference championship. It's not that they won't see it. It's that they're mentally not allowing themselves to be able to acknowledge the greatness that they've been able to see. So I'm very happy that the Broncos were able to win this conference championship. And I was reading an article that was written before the season started, and it was talking about why Fayetteville State was going to win the CIAA. And their answer was, Bowie State don't look too good. They lost Damon Wilson. Well, it turns out that Bowie State didn't do too hot this year. They had a solid season, but not a great season, and not a season up to the standard that we have seen over the last 3 years. And that standard was seeing Fayetteville State in the CIAA championship. That did not happen, and the Broncos won. So if that was the case, I don't know. Maybe Bowie State just had their number. But I do know that Bowie State was not around. Fayetteville State once again was around, and the fifth time was the charm. It's a very good story, man. And I thought it was interesting because they had to win in a way that they typically don't win. Fayetteville State doesn't typically win in a way where their defense falters and their offense has to make up for it. The only game they've even kind of been in that situation was the Virginia Union game. And they lost that game 28-31. We'll go ahead and flip the score because that's the exact score of this CIAA championship. And Fayetteville State won 31-28. So that's a different story, but that's the only really, game that I would say, yeah, they had to make up for a defense that was lacking, and they didn't completely make up for it, though they did put up a good amount of points. It just didn't completely make up for the defense. This time they did, and Najiri Peoples, running back for Chowan, was back. He had missed the last couple of games, and I thought he was just going to be out, but he made it back for the conference championship, and in this game, he ran for 3 touchdowns. So he didn't have as many yards as the first time these two teams squared off, but he ran for 3 touchdowns. And that really spearheaded the amount of points that Chowan was able to score. So now you look at Fayetteville State, and they spread the ball around. They had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. And then they won the game on a last-second field goal. Man, what an ending. Now you flip over to the SIAC. There was no need for the dramatics. There was no need to have your heartbeat racing. If you're a Benedict College fan or if you're a Tuskegee fan, you kind of knew the outcome very early. Very early. You knew what it was going to be. And sometimes I like those games, even when I'm on the losing end. Like, don't have my heart rate pumping. I know what it is. We not going to win. It's okay. But that's exactly what Tuskegee's feeling, But Benedict, it's a party. They up big at halftime. We know they're not getting caught. They've been the most dominant team all year. They've been that good. Even in times when I doubted them and continuously asked for them to prove themselves, they continued to do it, whether that was against Fort Valley or if that was against Albany. I didn't question them after that. I just said, you know what? I don't know who's going to win against them in Fort Valley. But what I do know is that you have to make sure that you beat Albany State. And I didn't think you was going to do it because I just went with what the past was, right? I just went with that. Benedict did it. At every point that they needed to prove themselves, they have done it this year. Eric Phoenix, over 400 yards total. Leading rusher on the team with over 90. Over 300 yards through the air. Lou Berdinelis doing Lou Berdinelis things. 3 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss. Benedict is that good, and I cannot wait to see them in the playoffs because this team has been so great that I really want to see how far that they're going to go in the playoffs. But matter of fact, you can't talk about how far a team is going to go unless you talk about where they're going to start. And that's exactly what we are going to do as we continue rolling with Locked On HBCU. We're going to talk about the D2 playoffs because the teams have been selected, what HBCUs made it, and then also where were these HBCUs. Before I get into that, however, today's episode is brought to you by Nissan, and this week's thrilling moment in college football is brought to you by them. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup of Nissans are intended to empower the drivers in vehicles that are as capable of as them. And some of them are more capable, man. I be on the road getting upset, but I noticed none of these drivers are driving Nissans. I have never had road rage at a single Nissan. Fun fact for you. But this thrilling moment is the walk-off field goal victory for Fayetteville State that boosted them over the edge and got them their first conference championship in 5 tries in the Richard Hayes era. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the Armada, the Frontier, the Pathfinder, all today available now at NissanUSA.com. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, appreciate you for making it to the last segment. Give yourself a nice little round of applause because this is the big one. We're talking about the playoffs. I have the rankings and then also I want to break them down. But it's been a common conversation. What HBCUs were going to make it into the playoffs this year? We kind of had 2 that I felt were locks in Benedict and Virginia Union. And then there was a couple more who were just in the mix. And I feel like over the last couple of weeks when they've been releasing these regional rankings, it's been about 5 to 7 HBCUs in total that have been in the mix as time has gone on. Only 3 made it, but that's still a good number. It's 1 more than last year, actually. Last year, only the SIAC and CIAA champions made it into the playoffs. This year, you have the champions from both of those conferences, and then also 1 more. And let's go ahead and get into where they are. Benedict is 1, Virginia Union is 4, and then also Fayetteville State is 7. So you have the champions in both. And then you have 1 extra. And I told you I almost slipped up and mentioned how they were the number 1 team and they deserve to be the number 1 seed, but that's the conversation for right now. And they are the number 1 seed. I don't think there's much to talk about here. I think it's kind of a given. Like, if they weren't the number 1 seed, we really would have had to question what's going on, because it's not as if this was a third party giving us these regional rankings. We knew they were the number 1 seed going into last week. Well, you took care of business against Tuskegee. What was going to stop you from being the number 1 seed now? It's not as if we were like, oh, this Darian said they're the number 1 seed. In the mouth of the South rankings, Benedict was the number 1 seed, but we'll see what the NCAA has to say. No, we knew the source. We knew exactly where these teams were ranked going into championship weekend, and it was just a question of where they were going to rank afterwards. So Benedict took care of business, and now they'll have a bye. They get to chill. They get to rest and see who their next opponent is going to be. Brings me to the next team, Virginia Union, number 4. And what's important about them being number 4 is that now that means they get to host a playoff game. And we kind of felt that, we kind of felt as if they were going to be 4, because that's where they were last week. And it didn't feel like anything enough happened to move them off of that. It's a big deal. After the great year they had, I know there's a little bit of disappointment for not being able to make it to the conference championship. But at the same time, there has to be a little bit of, solace that comes from knowing that, all right, well, we're going to have a home playoff game. Now, if they don't lose to Chowan, they're in the 1-2 seed conversation. They're right there with Delta State and Benedict. They're for sure 3. If they don't lose, they are for sure the 3rd seed at the worst. At the worst. Probably 2, if not 1. It's them and Benedict, man. It would have been crazy if the top 2 seeds would have been HBCUs, but unfortunately, that's not what happened. But at the same time, it depends on how you want to look at it. Did you want Virginia Union to be as high as possible, or did you want a 3rd HBCU in here? That brings me to Fayetteville State at number 7. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot this. So, if Virginia Union wins, because they're going to be playing Wingate, and this is supposed to be the closest matchup theoretically, 4 versus 5, it's the closest pairing in seeds, right? If they win, guess who they face next week? Yep, Benedict College. You're going to see the 2 best teams in D2 HBCU football face off against each other in the playoffs. That game will be crazy. Now, let's get to Fayetteville State. Because when you look at Fayetteville State, they're number 7. I didn't see that coming. I knew Virginia Union was going to make it. I even kind of expected them to be in the top half. They're right on the middle, but I expect them to be like in the top half-ish. They're still going to be a team that is hosting a playoff game. We knew what's up with Benedict. Like, anybody could have seen that. But Fayetteville State, I'll be honest with you, completely transparent. I'm new to the D2 playoffs, but I love that about this job, because I get to, pay attention to certain things I hadn't paid attention to in the past, specifically D2 football. I didn't watch too much D2 football. I'm getting to learn tendencies and things of that nature, and I'm enjoying it so much. But the thing is, I wasn't sure how far a conference championship would carry you when there's no automatic bid. I wasn't sure. But I can tell by Fayetteville State being number 7, that conference championship holds a lot of weight, because they weren't in the top 10 last week. But let's just move under the assumption that, all right, they're 11. We don't know, but let's just move in under the assumption they're 11. To go from 11 to 7, you have to jump 4 people. Mars Hill, they lost. You look at Tuskegee, they lost. So that's 2 teams down. Fort Valley State, and then West Georgia are the other 2 teams that Fayetteville State jumped to get in here. And Fort Valley isn't too surprising, but it does come down to the conference championship, because you were 4 spots below Fort Valley State, and they didn't play. You did play, and it was a close game between you and Chowan, but Fort Valley State ain't do nothing to lose any ground, but you probably jumped in because you won a championship, conference championship. Now, West Georgia stunned me, because West Georgia was 10. All these teams are above Fayetteville State, and we're just assuming that Fayetteville State is 11. I was shocked to see them jump West Georgia, because West Georgia, they knocked off Delta State, and they're the reason that Delta State is not the number 1 seed. It's the only game Delta State had lost. I was shocked. I was shocked to see that. But it makes sense because the conference championship gives you some weight. And I don't know if this is common, but I will tell you that I personally was surprised when I saw that Fayetteville State was number 7. This could be common, that the champion is just going to get that nod. I know it happens, but I wasn't sure, especially after looking at West Georgia's resume and being the only team to knock off Delta State. To me, that's about as equal to a conference championship as any game in the regular season could be. It didn't work out. I'm glad that it didn't, because now Fayetteville State is in and they get to face Delta State. So let's see. Let's see if they can knock off Delta State, because, man, that would be a major upset. I said that 4 versus 5 is supposed to be the closest when looking at Virginia Union. Well, 2 versus 7 is supposed to be the widest gap. So if there was any team that was the biggest underdog, it should be Fayetteville State. I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen of the day, check out Peter Bukowski on Locked On Sports Today, wherever you get your podcasts: Odyssey, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Does not matter. He's putting up great content. Just find somewhere to listen to it. On tomorrow's episode, there's an injury scare for North Carolina A&T that could really impact their chances at a Big South title. So we're going to talk about that before we preview the game on Friday. That's just a double lead in and a little bit of an extra tease for you. But in the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.